Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by the incredible Geoff McDonald. Geoff is the former VP of Unilever for Global HR. He's also co-founded the charity Minds at Work and is a thoroughly professional keynote speaker and mental health campaigner. He's had a huge amount of experience, and I'm thrilled that he's also on our Dial Global Advisory Board as well. So we're delighted to have him. And welcome to the show, Geoff.
Thanks, Leila, and really cool to have the opportunity to engage with you.
Thank you so much for being here with us, and it's great to have you here, really, to hopefully share more with our audience who is listening. Because of course, I'm very privileged to know a little about your unique story and some of your personal experiences and how you came to be where you are today. But it would be great if you could perhaps share, how you ended up in this position. Obviously, wearing the multiple different hats and working across the world now on various consultancy pieces. So talk to me about how you came to be where you are and perhaps some of the current projects that you're focusing on.
Yeah, sure, Leila. I never would have thought I would have got to where I am and what I'm doing today. I mean, that wasn't in the grand plan. I actually started my career as a teacher many, many years ago in South Africa, and I was going to be the headmaster of a school in South Africa. It was as simple as that, because I just loved seeing people grow and develop and being part of that journey and teaching them. But I lasted a while in teaching, and then I stumbled on this company called Unilever, and I had a 25-year career with Unilever, culminating, as you say, in the global VP HR for all of our marketing, communications and sustainability around the Unilever world. So I had about 8 years in the South African business, and then I spent 5 years working across Africa, the Middle East and Turkey. Then I went out to Australasia and headed up HR for the Australasian region. And then I came back and I did some global talent roles. And then I did a global business partnering role, culminating in the role that I just described. And there was a wonderful 25 years in the most amazing company. But on that journey back in 2008, and I only left Unilever at sort of middle of 2014. But back in 2008, I woke up one night, middle of the night, with a panic attack. Never ever experienced a panic attack in all my life. Kind of thought that I was having a heart attack, because panic attack wasn't even part of my vocabulary. I don't think I'd ever had a conversation with anybody about a panic attack. And I thought I was about to have a heart attack. Anyway, 7 o'clock the next morning, I'm still lying in bed, fretting, anxious, finding it difficult to get myself out of bed. And by lunchtime, I'm in a doctor's room, and a doctor begins to ask me all sorts of questions around my lifestyle. And I am then finally diagnosed with anxiety-fueled depression. I never knew what the word depression was. I used to think the word depression meant it's raining on a Saturday morning and I can't go for a bike ride, and so I'm depressed because it's raining outside. Or Arsenal Football Club, that I love to bits, loses every match in the last third of the season, and I get depressed about the Arsenal football team. I mean, that was my understanding of the word depression. And here I am, diagnosed in 2008 with anxiety-fueled depression. When I leave the doctor's rooms, I make a decision that saves my life, and that is not to be burdened by the stigma of mental ill health. And in many ways, the doctor liberated me to be able to make that decision. And so what I did with that decision was I told my family, I told my close friends, I told my employer what was wrong with me. And that ability to talk about my illness resulted in me experiencing the most unbelievable outpouring of love. And during my darkest moments, during my recovery, the only thing that actually kept me going was knowing how much I was loved by so many people. And last night I was doing something with our Minds at Work charity, and it was all around reintegrating people with mental ill health into the workplace. And they talk about three very important aspects of recovery for people. The one is to have hope. The other one is to take control of your recovery. And the third one is to feel that you have opportunity still out there in the world. What I felt this expert missed in amongst those three principles of recovery, I said to him afterwards, I said, you know what I think is the most important principle around recovery is love, and knowing that you feel loved by so many people. It was so huge in helping me to get better. Anyway, I get myself better over a period of 3 months. I go back to Unilever. 2010, I have a relapse, nothing as bad as 2008. I'm able to keep myself at work. And then in October of 2012, I'm walking home one evening and my wife phones me to tell me that that afternoon I lost a very good friend by suicide. He was the most wonderful person. He was the most energetic, fun-loving, wonderful father. And now he was dead and he had died by suicide. And you know, Leila, I got home that evening and I kind of thought to myself, I can't believe this. I mean, he hadn't told me, he hadn't told his friends how he was feeling. He'd kind of mentioned it to his wife, but she probably thought that he was just a bit stressed. And I lay there that night and I thought to myself, you know what, here I am now in 2012, flourishing in many ways, as you know, almost as a result of my illness in 2008 and 2010, learning how to recover every single day and keep myself healthy, both mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And here one of my closest friends is dead. What's the difference? And the only difference was my ability to talk and his inability to talk. And so I came to the very simple conclusion that stigma had just killed my friend. You know, had he had any physical illness, he would have gone and got help. He would have put his hand up. He would have spoken to people. But because he was suffering from a common form of mental illness, he didn't think that he could put his hand up and ask for help. And eventually that led him to take his own life. And I'm not saying to you this afternoon that had he been able to talk, he definitely would be here today. But I honestly believe that had he been able to talk, there's a tiny, tiny chance that he would still be here. And, you know, I knew how powerful it was to be able to talk. And so I just thought to myself, you know, there's probably, I don't know, a 1% chance, even if there's only a 1% chance that he would still be here today, had he been able to talk. You know what? That's worth fighting for. That is worth fighting for. And so that night I wrote to Alistair Campbell. I asked him to meet up with me. Within 10 days, we got together. He responded to my email within 10 minutes. I couldn't believe it because it was an email from Geoff McDonald at btinternet.com. You know, this wasn't Tony Blair writing to Alistair Campbell. Within 10 minutes, I got a response. Within 10 days, we were together up in Belsize Park. And, you know, Leila, ever since that day, he began to open some doors for me, which allowed me to take some very, very tiny footsteps back in 2012 on a path with a journey filled with a great sense of purpose. And my purpose is to try and create workplaces all over the world, everywhere, every workplace, everywhere in the world, where people feel they genuinely have the choice to just ask for some help if they are suffering from a common form of mental ill health. And you know, there isn't one workplace anywhere in the world where if somebody is suffering from a common form of physical illness, you know, the flu, a migraine, a bad cold, they know that they can put their hand up and ask for some help. Why do we still have workplaces all over the world where people feel they still don't genuinely have that choice to put their hand up and ask for some help if they're suffering from a common form of mental ill health? And I am absolutely determined to try and change that. And I want to change it because I know that one conversation could just lead to saving a life. And that's worth fighting for. So that's how I kind of ended up where I am now. I left Unilever at the end of 2014, and all I had was this sense of purpose, this desire to create that kind of world. And you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, the universe, whether it's that sense of purpose, has taken me to people and to places I could never, ever have imagined. And that's why I say when I started, there was no grand plan to this. But the last 5 years, you know, being filled through this sense of purpose has just opened up opportunities, introduced me to people. You're one of them who I could never have imagined that I would engage with and meet with going forward. So yeah, that's how I got where I am.
Geoff, this is what I love about speaking with you, is because everything you say it with such passion and rigor and enthusiasm. And, not only that, you speak so much from the heart, and, and thank you for sharing as well some of those personal pieces, and especially about the suicide of your friend. I had it was my uncle actually, and, don't actually often talk about this ever, certainly not publicly, but committed suicide. And I think the more that you speak to people about things like this, actually the more that you realize they're incredibly common. It's like you say, it is being able to have that voice, and it's being able to speak. And what almost looks a small differential between yourself, who's obviously struggled and suffered and bounced right back, and your friend who's also had the same, talking versus not talking, it's just amazing, isn't it? And the more people you talk to about things like this, the more people that actually end up saying, actually, that's happened to me, or I've had someone close to me, who's experienced that, or even I've experienced that myself. So, it's just.
Leila, I mean, every 40 seconds, somebody takes their own life in this world. Mm-hmm. Every 40 seconds. So I don't know how long we've been talking for now, but let's just work it out, or we could work it out. We're going to have a half-hour conversation. How many seconds? Every 40 seconds across the world, somebody has taken their own life. And, and I think the other thing, we should be clear about is that you don't have to be depressed to die by suicide. Life just might, at that moment in time, just be completely overwhelming, and it's too painful and too hard, and you make this very irrational decision. But I just know that when people are feeling that way, if they can just have a conversation where they feel loved, where they feel a sense of hope, where they feel that there might be an opportunity to come out of this, then being able to have that conversation, wow, that can save a life. And by God, it's worth fighting for.
And you're so right. It is that one conversation that can make the difference. Right. I'm not sure whether I told you this, but many years ago, I used to work, voluntary actually for the Samaritans. It was 3 years on the phone, speaking to individuals, and often it was, people didn't feel they had anyone to be able to turn to. And actually just having that human touch and that element that there is someone there that's willing to listen and be an ear, it makes the world of difference. And, very, very powerful fact there from you, every 40 seconds. I mean, if that doesn't hit home, I don't know what does, frankly. So, I think it's something that we certainly should be speaking about far more, and certainly with the amount of hours that individuals work these days in the digital world, it's more so important now than ever before, because I guess whilst we're able to communicate via the wonders of social media and say now on this video call, actually that human to human contact is not always so prevalent. It's often through a screen, isn't it?
Yeah. And, your real passion around diversity and inclusion, how do we create these workplaces where people actually feel completely included? And I can't feel completely included if I can't talk about my mental health. Of course I can talk about my physical health, but for me, a truly inclusive culture is a culture where I can talk about also my mental ill health and my mental health, because mental health is a positive thing. Having good mental health helps me to have good cognitive ability, and I can think clearly, I can make good decisions. But if I'm ill, I want to be able to be part of an organization and a culture that feels inclusive, where it's kind of, that's okay to be able to talk about this stuff, because you're probably just normal. And maybe something has kind of happened to you. We all live on the spectrum, don't we? We all live. I hate the statistic about 1 in 4 and 1 in 6. I mean, it's 1 in 1. We all have mental health. We all have mental ill health. And some days I wake up feeling very anxious, and it goes within an hour. And then in 2008, I got really ill, and it stayed with me for 6 months.
You're absolutely right. But we are all on the spectrum. You know, life is full of these ups and downs and kind of cyclical moments where we are going to feel the pain worse than others. You know, I think there is a degree that we all suffer from mental health. You know, and like you know, have a huge amount of anxiety, you know, from the past, from various different times, and, you know, keep that calmed, you know, various tools and techniques. But, you know, really speaking to people is the best medication you can possibly get over and above anti-anxiety tablets and antidepressants and the likes. But speaking, it relieves that burden off the shoulders, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell me, because I'm sure there's lots of people who are kind of listening in now, and I think especially leaders, you've got so much experience with, you know, seasoned leaders and C-suite with all of your experience, that, you know, do you find that there's kind of more of a stigma at that senior level? You know, and as a male, you know, specifically as well, you know, we do have, you know, a lot of you know, men, without stereotyping here, who are in, you know, these kind of senior positions of power, who perhaps, you know, have almost felt the need to be this kind of, you know, put on this facade of being in this leadership position, when actually I think these days that's not always necessary. You know, talk to me a little about the stigma piece.
So I think let's start with the second one. So do I think that men find it more difficult to talk about this stuff? Absolutely. Absolutely. Men find it more difficult to talk about this stuff. I think men, for some reason, we find it more difficult to be in touch with our emotions, and then to be able to express those emotions, and to be able to talk to our other male friends about those emotions. So yes, I think men find it more difficult to talk about this. I also think that at a senior level, I think it becomes gender neutral, and it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. I do think that it's more difficult for really senior people who are still very, very ambitious, or who is the CEO of an organization and is being watched over by his or her external board. I think that it is difficult for those individuals to be open and to talk about the challenges that they might have had. And, you know, part of what I'm trying to do, Leila, is I'm actually trying to make heroes out of people who have suffered from a mental ill health condition. When I look at some of the people today that are in this movement of breaking the stigma, I mean, these people are heroes. These people are creating a different world, a different narrative, all as a result of the significant challenge that they've overcome. And in many ways, I would like us to begin to think about and have a mindset of, you know, irrespective of whether you're junior, senior, or whatever, that episode that you had of mental ill health. If I talk about my own experience, Leila, do you know what? It's made me a better human being. And I'm not going to wish it on anybody else. But I'll tell you some of the attributes that I've got better at as a result of my experience. I'm a better listener. I'm more compassionate. I have overcome a significant challenge in my life. When life didn't seem worth living, I took accountability to live. I decided I wanted to live and I wanted to make myself better. I overcame that significant challenge in my life. I've become so much more aware of and in tune with the symptoms and the emotions and the feelings of other people. Imagine that humanness leading organizations today versus, with all due respect, some of the narcissistic bullies that I see leading organizations today. And so how do we begin to create a narrative out there that says, you know what, somebody who's had a mental ill health challenge, they're probably a better human being. And that we want more humanness in workplaces today. And we want those human beings leading and creating value through their organizations. And then the other thing is, let's see these people as somewhat heroic, because as a result of their mental ill health, they are engaging in activities and things to really make this world a better place, and we need more of them.
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating the way that you talk about all of that, because I completely concur. I think, the leadership of the future will genuinely be about the heart. I think in the past, or right now almost, it's about brains and the mind, and the heart is starting to get there. Before that, it was quite something different. It's almost this evolving piece. And, fortuitously, our future generations, millennials, of which I am just, zillennials and the likes, really are starting to see the importance of purpose as a bigger, wider issue. So there are good things, I think, afoot, and I think we have lots of positive things to be certainly thankful about in the future, because what you talk about there with such passion and tenacity is absolutely where we ought to be. And unfortunately there are still bullies and, as you very directly said in your South African way, narcissistic individuals. And we've all seen that classical archetypal booming leader who comes in expecting to be a certain way, when actually that is not what they should look like in the future. It's not what, we don't want to look up to people like that. And to use your terminology there about heroes, why would we have a hero like that?
Yeah, and people have got a sense of humanness. I love what you've just said, Leila. I mean, I think AI in many ways is going to force us to be more human, because the technical expertise that got you to the top of that organization is no longer going to be enough. It's going to be your humanness and your ability to engage with your customer, with your client, with your consumer in a way that feels human, that feels compassionate, that feels caring. That's going to make the difference into the future, because some robot is going to do all the... So you're not going to get your kudos from your technical expertise anymore. I'm going to buy you because of how I feel about you.
Exactly. The USP is the humanistic part of it all. Yeah. Absolutely. It's the most valuable commodity of the future. And, I guess finally, because, oh my goodness, I could sit here and talk to you all day, and I'm realizing we've actually been talking for nearly half an hour, and actually should be coming to the end of the podcast, whilst I feel like launching another one all over again and talking further about this. I'd love to kind of just summarize and go into almost just a couple of quick last questions in a lightning round. I'm going to give you only 30 seconds to answer each one. 30 seconds, quick fire round. So is there any advice that you would have given to your younger self if you had the opportunity?
Wow. Is there any advice I would have given to my younger self if I had the opportunity? And the advice would be, yes, of course I would. And it would be, learn to recover more during the course of a day. Learn to be more compassionate to myself, self-compassion. Be comfortable with relaxation and just taking a bit of time out to be myself. And by God, I wish I'd also learned how to look after aspects of my emotional and mental health, just like I had my physical health.
And would there be any advice that you would impart to others out there who are struggling and perhaps scared to speak out, or worried about the repercussions that they may face internally, whether at work or...
I mean, my advice would be, my first bit of advice would be, if you are feeling levels of stress that are becoming distressful, if you are feeling that you're beginning to develop an unhealthy relationship with things like alcohol or other means of relaxing yourself, and you know that the stress is actually becoming distress, my plea and my advice is find somebody who loves you and just start that conversation about how you're feeling. Please just go and have that conversation with that person. The other piece of advice that I would give is, please take time out to prioritize your health. It is the most important thing. It is the most important thing. Now, you might think signing a deal and working 24/7 for years and years is the most important thing. It is not. It is your health. And if you want to survive in an environment which is as busy and as anxious and as volatile and as complex, that's not going to change. And so therefore carve time out during the course of the day to attend and look after your health. Prioritize it. Prioritize it. So, so important.
Thank you so much, Geoff. That has, honestly been truly, truly inspirational. And it was quite, if you don't mind, it's quite funny then because the lights actually went on. So whoever's listening to the audio version of this and is not watching the video version on YouTube, actually will have seen the lights go on when Geoff said that. So it was quite a good moment actually to see as well. So if you're listening in on audio, check it out on YouTube as well. But what a wonderful way to kind of end the show here today, Geoff. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. I really hope that individuals who are tuning in can really glean with them, glean and take away some of those real gems and nuggets of wisdom. If you're struggling, whether it's at work, whether it's in your personal life, take a leaf out of Geoff's book. As he said, really find someone who loves you. It is absolutely as simple as that. Find someone who loves you, who cares, who's willing to talk and listen to what it is that you have to say, because I promise you, it will be the best thing that you've done. Do not suffer in silence. Thank you so much, Geoff, for being here.
Pleasure, Leila. Pleasure. And thanks for having me on your show.
You're so, so welcome. And I will see you very soon anyway. Very soon indeed. So for everyone listening, you've been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast show with you every week. If you'd like to get in touch with Geoff directly, he's on LinkedIn, he's on YouTube, he's in many different places in the digital sphere. So make sure you check him out and listen to some of his talks. Or alternatively, do reach out to him on LinkedIn. I'll put all the information into the podcast show notes for today's show, and you can check those out online on YouTube channel www.darglobal.org/podcast. I'm Leila McKenzie, and I will look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.